The philosopher's study was quiet again. The faint smell of old books lingered in the air, and the lamp cast a soft golden glow over the room. The young man sat with his arms tightly crossed, a storm brewing in his eyes. "I still don't believe you," he said stubbornly. "You claim our past doesn't define us, that we can choose our lives, but look, outside life is not so simple. The world is full of cruelty, inequality, and suffering. If you think people can just choose happiness, you must be blind to reality." The philosopher smiled, not mockingly, but with patience. "So you believe the world is complicated? That life itself is a puzzle too tangled to solve?" Of course, the youth shot back. "Only a fool would call this world simple." The philosopher leaned forward. His voice was calm but firm. "And yet Adler said it clearly, the world is simple. Life is simple. It is people who make it complicated." The young man laughed bitterly. Ridiculous. How could anyone look at war, corruption, jealousy, and suffering and call the world simple? The philosopher poured water into a clear glass and held it up to the lamplight. "Do you see this glass?" he asked. "Yes. Some will call it half empty, others will call it half full. Which is correct?" The youth frowned. "Both are correct. It depends on perspective." "Exactly," said the philosopher. "The glass has not changed. What changes is how we interpret it. The same is true of the world. It has no fixed meaning, good or bad. It is we who attach meaning to it. Whether life is unbearable or joyful is not the world's doing, but our interpretation." The young man leaned forward, agitated. "So if someone loses everything, if someone suffers terribly, you would say it's just their imagination?" "Not imagination," the philosopher replied. "Interpretation. Pain exists, yes. But suffering is the story we build around pain. Two men may endure the same hardship, poverty, illness, betrayal. One curses the world and despairs. The other accepts it, learns from it, and even finds gratitude. The event is the same. The world is the same. What differs is the lens through which they choose to see it." The young man grew quiet. The words unsettled him, but he was not ready to yield. The philosopher set the glass down and looked directly into the youth's eyes. "Now tell me, what do you believe is the root of human unhappiness?" The youth thought for a moment. "Misfortune, bad luck, poverty, illness. There are many causes." The philosopher shook his head. "Adler said this, all problems are interpersonal problems. Every difficulty you face at its core comes from your relationship with others." "That's absurd," the youth snapped. "What about loneliness?" "That's a problem I face within myself, not with others." The philosopher smiled faintly. "And what is loneliness if not the desire to be connected with others? Even when you're alone, you are measuring yourself against a world of other people seeking recognition, fearing rejection. To live is to exist among others. That is why every problem, large or small, is rooted in how we relate to them." The young man felt a sting of recognition. He thought of his own struggles, his bitterness toward classmates who surpassed him, the constant sense of being overlooked, his obsession with proving himself. Weren't these all, in the end, problems of people, not the world itself? The philosopher continued, his tone steady. "Consider the feeling of inferiority. A man sees another who is taller, stronger, wealthier. At once he thinks, I am inferior. I cannot be happy because of this. But this is not truth, it is interpretation. Feeling inferior is not the same as being inferior. Differences exist, yes, but difference is not defeat. It is we who turn differences into judgments." The youth scoffed. "Easy for you to say. The world is unequal. Some are born into wealth and power. Others have nothing. That's not interpretation, that's reality." "Yes," the philosopher nodded. "Unequal in ability, unequal in circumstance, but never unequal in worth. The problem begins when we enter into competition, When we measure our lives against others, chasing recognition, fearing failure, if your worth depends on surpassing others, then your life will always be suffering, because there will always be someone stronger, smarter, richer, or more admired than you. The philosopher stood and walked to the shelves, running his hand over the spines of books. Competition may appear to drive progress, but in truth it is poison. Once you live to outdo others, you are never free. Imagine a student who studies only to beat his classmates. If he succeeds, he is proud for a moment, yet the pride fades because there will always be another rival. If he fails, he despairs. Either way, he lives not for himself, but for comparison. That is not freedom. That is slavery to recognition. The young man lowered his gaze. He could not deny the truth. His whole life had been a race against classmates, colleagues, even friends. Every achievement was measured by whether others noticed. Every failure was unbearable because others saw it. The philosopher returned to his chair. His voice was soft now, almost gentle. You see, life is not complicated. It is only complicated because you have chosen rivalry and recognition as your path. Remove those and life becomes simple. To live is to cooperate, not to compete, to exist among others, not against them. The meaning of life is not something you discover hidden in the world. It is something you decide here and now and how you choose to live. The philosopher slid the glass of water back across the table, half empty or half full. The world has no inherent cruelty, no inherent kindness. It is you who gives it meaning. The moment you understand this, the world ceases to be your enemy. The young man stared at the glass, his fists clenched on his knees. Could it be true that his unhappiness was not the fault of the world, but of his own interpretation? That his endless comparisons and need for recognition had trapped him in suffering? The thought filled him with both anger and fear. If the philosopher was right, then he could no longer blame the world for his misery. The responsibility would rest on his own choices, and yet deep within, a faint spark flickered. Perhaps life really could be simple. Perhaps freedom lay not in changing the world, but in changing how he saw it. The young man lifted his gaze, his voice quieter now. I don't know if I can believe you, but I want to hear more. The philosopher smiled warmly. Good, then let us continue.